Once again, and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the studios of the American Guns and Glory Network here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues primarily. Fired Up we put up a new show every Friday around 5 p.m. Pacific, and it also appears on YouTube and numerous other media. The audio feed is rebroadcast for our radio listeners on Saturdays on the Nevada Talk Network. You can look them up online. I just did to make sure. Then you can just look up Nevada Talk Network. It'll tell you all the stations. And it's on all of them Saturday at noon. If you have questions or comments, information will appear during the show that usually in a runner on the bottom of the screen that gives our contact information, websites, and so forth. If you send me an email or a text or leave a message on my home recorder, office recorder, I will respond by telephone or the same media that you use to get to me. And we do answer everything that comes in, sometimes later than sooner, but we answer every inquiry. Questions directed to our guests can be sent the same place, and I will forward them to our guests. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States. Rarely, if ever, covered by the mainstream media, so he always present. I did it again. Last week's show, I stumbled over that same thing. I got that word out of there. Hang on one second. I'm going to change the outline so I don't have to try and say present every week. I fall over it. Some are good shootings, some are questionable shootings. Once in a while, there's one that's just plain wrong, but everything I pick out to use has legal points and tactic points that are of use to people who carry guns concealed or carry on the street and keep a gun in their home for self-defense. So that's why I pick them out. And the results that we give on this show may not apply to all listeners because jurisdictions locally always decide what the rules are. And we have a California attorney here with me who's also a Nevada attorney. Otherwise, you have to look for an attorney if you're involved in a case in your local jurisdiction. We can direct you to one if you need, and away we go. My guest today is, as I said, Nevada and California star attorney, Donald J. Green. Welcome back, Don.
Well, thanks, Bob. It's always a pleasure to be here. And
nice looking tie.
well, thank you. I got this as a present about 10 minutes ago. Bob, again, for your listeners, my name is Don Green. You can reach me on my personal cellular 24 hours a day at 702-409-8239. And with the assistance of Mr. Rick Manning and his staff, who are producing this show today, we're going to have a new website which is going to be up in a few days. It's much more informative and much more detailed. Additionally, for all of your viewers and listeners who want, in Nevada, we have just had made our pocket cards which show all of the jurisdictions in which Nevada has reciprocity for CCWs in Nevada. And it's a plain card and has everything from the Nevada Department of Public Safety website, and it's got our contact information on the front. And some of your listeners have called me and said, why don't we have all of the jurisdictions which accept Nevada? And the reason why is that some of the other jurisdictions have full-time legislatures. And some of those legislatures have a tendency to change the reciprocity jurisdictions quite frequently. So you need to check on the individual. You need to check on the individual states. Why don't we have one for California? Because California doesn't accept anyone's CCWs but a handful of states such as Texas do accept California's. So you can get a hold of us, and if you send it through Bob's website right now, we'll make sure that when you contact us, we'll get you one of these cards in the mail. Thank you.
Yeah, and you had some on your table last gun show.
Yes, we do. But those were from, those were from the 2017 legislature. These are from May 2018 and our brand new legislative session, which requires every year that this change.
Okay. This first story is another one that I couldn't really do without an attorney present because this is This is from ABC TV 57 News. It was reported back on the 27th of July this year in South Bend, Indiana. The St. Joseph County Police were dispatched to an apartment complex for a call about a possible home invasion. When officers arrived, they found a 27-year-old male subject lying on the apartment floor with a gunshot wound to his abdomen. He was transported to the hospital and later pronounced dead. Officers noted the door of the apartment was splintered and debris from the door was spread throughout the area adjacent to the door. A female resident and the deceased had previously been in a relationship. When he called, she told him his property was in the car and he wasn't welcome in the apartment. Pretty straightforward. A short time later, he arrived and demanded to be let inside. She refused, and fearing for her safety, she secured her handgun. He broke through the door, moved towards her, and began hitting her. She told the officers she then shot him in self-defense. The prosecutor's office confirmed 3 weeks later, this would be on the 20th of this month, of August, that witnesses, physical evidence, digital evidence, forensic evidence showed the shooting was brought about by the deceased's actions and his death was a result of those actions. The fatal shooting of the decedent at the Castle Point Apartments was justifiable homicide and no charges will be filed. When I was doing research for this story, I had some other sources I looked at that weren't included in this ABC thing. Which I don't want to go into on the air, but I discovered this deceased family believes the female victim got away with murder. The woman has been receiving continued threats over this through the mail and phone and occasionally in person. Most often in shooting cases, especially domestic ones, the fight continues long after the smoke clears. Nobody wants to believe their brother, their child, or their cousin, or their friend was deserving of being shot to death. You can save yourself with warnings and restraining orders. If you can save yourself with warnings and restraining orders, try to do that. As I'm working for the constable's office for years, I'm quite familiar with the restraining orders don't work on people who don't want them to work. It's a piece of paper. It's valuable for legal grounds if you get into a tussle with a person, but that paper isn't going to stop a wacko who's coming after you. Anyway, with the family going after her and so forth, she's kind of in hiding now. If I've learned anything in my last 50 years of doing this, few people ever really win gunfights. Interesting case. Mr. Green.
It's hard to imagine that in any jurisdiction, this woman ever being charged with the crime. Your viewers and your listeners need to pay attention to this case because it has applicability to inside the home, outside the home, inside a relationship, outside of a relationship. 1. The female told the police that she and the deceased were previously in a relationship, possibly area for a problem. 2. She told the police that she had advised the deceased that his property was in a car and he wasn't welcome in the apartment. 3. A short time later, we're not talking weeks, a short time later, in the heat of the moment, the deceased arrives and demands to be let inside. 4, the female homeowner or apartment dweller refuses, fears for her safety, retrieves her handgun, presumably a legal possession of a firearm. 5, the deceased broke through the door, which the police had noted there was splintering of the door jamb. And 6, the deceased moved towards the victim in her own home. And 7, the deceased started hitting the victim homeowner. 8, the homeowner or apartment dweller tells the police she shot in self-defense. By the numbers, very precise points. It is not scripted. It was exactly what someone should say, even if they're in a parking lot at Walmart. This is what I did. This is what happened. Because if someone else was viewing this, suppose this happened outside, they would look at it perhaps in a different perspective. And that's why this homeowner did everything precisely by the numbers. Of course, as you point out, the further research indicates that the family members of the deceased thinks that this woman got away with murder. But I think that she defended herself correctly. And even in California, assuming that she was able to have this handgun and assuming that it was a legal handgun, that is, whether or not it could chamber a certain number of rounds, this would be a justifiable homicide, and if he didn't die, a justifiable shooting.
I agree, virtually everywhere. The problem is, as I said, these types of situations really never end. If you have time to warn the guy off or the assailant off, because they go the other way too, do that. It's a life-changing event that seems to never go away. This next case is from KTLA TV5. Took place in Garden Grove, California on the 3rd of this month. The incident began around 11:30 a.m. when the homeowner returned to his residence in the 13,000 block of Rosita Place and discovered men jumping over a wall into his backyard. This is according to Garden Grove Police Lieutenant Carl Whitney. A witness told the homeowner that his cousin, the main witness here is his cousin who was with the homeowner when they arrived. And they were together when the homeowner saw the two suspects coming out of the home behind him carrying two bags. The resident challenged them with, "What are you guys doing in my backyard?" The intruders denied coming from his backyard. The homeowner, who was armed, pulled his gun out and tried to detain the two men. They, in turn, attacked the homeowner and tried to disarm him. Now we've got a fight over the gun. One of the two suspects was carrying a safe, presumably a desk-type safe, that he refused to drop, even though they're scuffling with the safe and the gun and the two guys. During this fight, a shot went off, which in turn caused that intruder, the guy who was calling the safe. We're going to avoid confusion on this point, I started calling him suspect number 1. He might have been hit, but he still managed to get back into a black Lincoln Navigator with paper plates, dealer plates. The suspect then was driven away by a third party. The second suspect, who was left behind, is identified as a 36-year-old Long Beach resident and taken to a nearby hospital for treatment of injuries. Detectives are working to locate the first suspect and the getaway driver. The investigators searching the house behind the owner's home later now found that the window had been smashed and the house was ransacked. Apparently, this is unusual, but the unarmed suspects, there were no weapons, no guns shown on their part, attack an armed homeowner who's attempting to detain them. Fortunately, they didn't manage to take away his firearm. Suspect number 2 jumped into the SUV, apparently driven by a third suspect, and they drive away. No information was in the story about what happened to the safe. When I tried to explain this already to somebody, said, "Well, where's the safe go?" Tactical note here, there are often more opponents than you can see. You don't see the backup guy. You don't see the friend waiting in the car. You don't see the other guy that's in the house hiding behind something. These two bad guys left their partner behind. He was detained and they drove off. Interesting. He was not cooperating with the police, so maybe at this point anyway, so that maybe they had an idea that he wouldn't. it's clearly reasonable in my mind for the homeowner to pull his gun facing two opponents, but it may not be legal for him to do that because we're dealing with California. So that's why the story's here, and that's why California Attorney Don Green is here.
There's a distinct possibility. Now, Garden Grove is, for all of your listeners who don't know the geographic region of the Los Angeles area, it would be in the general vicinity of like Disneyland and Downey, kind of in that general area. But regardless of where in California, but more specifically in Los Angeles, I think the homeowner has a problem because under the California Penal Code, there is no right to carry a firearm on your person, concealed or otherwise, in your home unless you've got a concealed weapons permit. So if I am an average Joe homeowner in Garden Grove, California, in July or August of 2018, and I do not have a concealed weapons permit, and I'm walking around with that weapon underneath my shirt, I'm committing a felony for which I'm probably going to be jailed with a very high bail and face the possibility of at least a felony charge and even of a negotiated deal, probably a felony. Why? Again, there is no right under California law to, even as a homeowner, to carry a weapon concealed. We don't know, but it says that he retrieved his firearm. We don't know if it was under his shirt. Even if he's not carrying it in his shirt in California, there is no right to open carry. It just doesn't exist. So even if he had it out, even if he had it underneath, he's wrong and committing a felony. And that's why I think that this man, even though it may be admirable what happened, faces the potential of being charged, especially in the Los Angeles County, or maybe not so much Orange County. So I'm not sure if Garden Grove is in Orange County or Los Angeles County. Orange County, California being more conservative. Los Angeles County, we don't even need to say anything about that.
Apparently, from what I read in the reports, they allude that there was not a firearms charge here. I believe the guy probably had a concealed carry permit because he pulled the gun, the report said, not retrieved the gun. But the issue is, to me, as I looked at this, he's making a third-party defense that he's intervening in. When he goes, initially sees them and is coming over the fence, or they appear to be coming from his backyard, and he pulls his gun and stops them. And at that point, that'd be fine in most places in Nevada. You see somebody in your backyard, you grab a gun and point it at them and say, "What the hell are you doing?" But in California, they didn't show any weapons.
Where's the threat?
He's doing a third-party defense.
Right,
He doesn't even know they committed a crime.
even though there's some presumptions, remember, a presumption is if you make the basic points in a presumption, the other party has the burden to disprove the presumption by whatever means. Now, although there's a presumption that if someone is in your backyard and you don't know who that person is up to no good. But still, before you use the weapon, before you threaten to use or use deadly force, there still must be that element of great bodily harm, immediate great bodily harm, or death. And it's not here, it's not present.
Yeah. I don't see it. It's quite surprising when you confront two people with a gun that they go after you. That is highly unusual. Generally, they turn and run, or they start explaining something, or, back away slowly, or just turn and walk away. Generally, when somebody's on your property, they knew they weren't on their own property. They don't know who this guy is. And when you point a gun at people, they withdraw rather than assault you. It makes no sense.
Yes, it makes no sense.
You want to key up a commercial here, there, studio staff, or are we set to do it? Okay. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Hi, I'm Bob Irwin, and I get to do my own commercial. The short version is I've had 50 years experience in firearms, firearm repair, firearm design, 30,000 CCW holders I've personally taught, 20,000 security officers, etc. Taught in 28 police academies, firearms and use force. I've also appeared more than 200 times in gun-related cases in federal, state, and local court. I wrote this book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense, because it answers virtually all the questions that I get every time I talk to people, answers questions that come in the emails. It will tell you what you need to know to keep yourself out of prison if you get involved in a self-defense shooting case, keep from losing your house in a civil lawsuit. There are lots of things I've learned over these years and watched people make a lot of mistakes. This book will save you a lot. If you purchase one, read through it, I'm sure you will find it enlightening. And it'll save me a lot of time on these shows trying to explain to people what they did wrong and what they shouldn't have done and so forth and so on. So you can buy it by sending me the funds at the address below, bob@firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my phone number there, which is 702-257-1060. I will return your calls and tell you where to mail the money and so forth and so on. They're available on my website also, which is attached to this regular show. Cost is $15. I said add for postage if you live outside the immediate 50 states, and I will get it to you first class mail. Thank you for listening. This book will save you a lot of hassle. Thank you. And we are back. This story is from KMOV TV4 on August 2nd. It took place in Crystal City, Missouri. And unidentified, you'll understand later why he was unidentified. 80-year-old homeowner said he returned home recently to discover that someone had been in his house in a neighborhood off Highway 61 on the south side of Crystal City, Missouri. What he first saw was a garden hose stretched across the driveway that was turned on. His wife agreed that someone may be inside the house, so she entered, and when she did that, she heard a door open inside the house. She said something, but nobody answered. But when she tried to go, she went all the way through the house, tried to go out the back door. She found the deadbolt was locked from the inside. That's a bad sign. So the elderly resident didn't wait for the police. He grabbed a handgun and started searching the house himself. When he looked in the basement, he saw more evidence that someone had been in the home. He said, well, I had to reach in and turn a light on under the steps, and that was a little bit concerning, but I did it. When he turned the light on, there's the intruder. He told him to do what he was told or he'd be shot, and the intruder complied. He actually kneeled down. The resident then checked the burglar to make sure he wasn't armed and then marched him outside to wait for the police. The homeowner's 53-year-old son was outside and already on the phone with 911. Makes me wonder why he wasn't in the house helping his dad. Anyway, the 36-year-old intruder was taken into custody and booked on suspicion of burglary. Crystal City Police are continuing their investigation. The homeowner added, I either thought he was high on something or hallucinating. He was trying to say something about being an undercover agent. I'm repeating myself again. It's really risky to search your home when you could just call 911 and wait for the cops. Convincing an 80-year-old veteran when somebody's in his house and his wife has already gone into the house, you can't. I've talked to 80-year-old veterans, and God love them and their service, and they're cranky old guys, and God damn it, nobody's going to go in my house, or I'm going to go get them. His wife was more aggressive than he was in this case, searching the suspect, and then marching him outside was probably not a good choice either. If you find somebody in your house under these circumstances, you've looked in the house where you could have waited for the cops. Put him face down on the floor with their arms spread out, their palms up. It turns out the intruder was a wacko with some apparently a totally unaggressive personality, and that weak personality probably saved this guy's life. My hat's off to this couple. They are courageous. I'd love to have them as next door neighbors. And don't do this, but these are wonderful folks. Mr. Green.
If I was the deputy district attorney and this was in Los Angeles County, I would say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this man is guilty. That is the 80-year-old homeowner of false imprisonment, assault with a deadly weapon, kidnapping with the use of a deadly weapon, and marching him out, and display of a firearm in a neighborhood where people could be shot. Why? There is nothing to suggest that, other than being in the home, that the intruder with a totally unaggressive personality did anything to advance what could be considered to be great bodily harm or injury. He did nothing to show that these people were in imminent fear of death, other than he's in the house. He's downstairs, cowering in the basement or another room. The homeowner has him at gunpoint, searches him, which is a battery, and battery with use of a deadly weapon, has to use the weapon, but it's battery while in possession of a weapon, which is under separate crime in California, and then assaults him by pointing the weapon at him. So what we have here, the lesson is call 911 and let the police clear the house. Do not search the suspect, because the suspect is going to turn around, pull the weapon out, and shoot you. Or the suspect is going to grab your weapon. This man cut out many of his defenses had he been detained in, like, perhaps New York or California. And that's why I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this man is guilty of the following crimes.
Yeah, this is where, and we've talked about it on other shows, this is where if he's actually brought to trial, where you want to have a jury instead of a judge, because you want a jury that you can say, look, the guy's 80 years old, he did what he felt was right, and he wasn't trying to commit a crime. And hopefully they let him off. A court trial, they're going to look at just what you said, I think.
Oh, the judge is
no
going to question. The judge is just going to put him in jail immediately.
Yeah, he's going to apply the law. We've got a couple of other things, but we're running short on time, and this is the one show in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to try and actually end not too early and not too late, now that we have our timers working. The new website is up at firedupwithboberwin.com, and as Don mentioned earlier, he's getting a website put up also, and they'll be intertwined to each other, so you can go from one to the other. Our website contains recent shows. There's 8 or 9 of them up there now, with older shows being added as we get to it. The older shows are standard definition. The new ones are high definition. So it's a little tricky to get both on there. The commercials keep us on the air, so please patronize our sponsors. We'll be back next Thursday again here on our website and on YouTube at the American Guns and Glory Network. Remember, the audio portion is broadcast on the Nevada Talk Network. I just punched up their website. I don't have to give all the rest of the information because it comes up on your screen. And if you just search Nevada Talk Network, you got it. It'll give you all the stations. It's run at noon on Saturdays at approximately 14 stations now throughout rural Nevada and every place at the moment except Clark County, where I am. So, working on that. Thank you for supporting Fired Up. Please subscribe to these broadcasts. When you look at one of our shows, there's always a button that says subscribe. Please do that. And then you get the shows automatically. As soon as they come out every Thursday, they'll show up on your computer. Thanks for watching. Don, thank you once again.
Thank you, of course. It's an honor.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Maybe. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.